Let's now review our 2025-2026 NFHS basketball rules changes. In Rule 4, we have a change to the definition of goaltending. The revision just adds the word defensive and the other language stays the same. So it's now, by rule, impossible for an offensive player to commit a goaltending violation. Officials no longer need to consider whether the ball in flight towards the basket is a try or a pass. So goaltending occurs during a try or tap when a defensive player touches the ball while the ball is on its downward flight, entirely above the level of the basket ring, has the possibility of entering the basket in flight, and is not touching the basket cylinder. Again, during a try or tap, when a defensive player touches the ball while the ball is on its downward flight, entirely above the ring, a possibility of entering the basket in flight, and not touching the basket cylinder. Our next rules change deals with goaltending during a free throw attempt. And again, we've added the word defensive to clarify that goaltending occurs when a defensive player touches the ball outside the cylinder during a free throw attempt. So basically, any defensive interference with the free throw is goaltending. This rule ensures free throws remain uncontested and scoring attempts are protected. Another change to the goaltending definition deals with a shot, a try attempt, that contacts the backboard and is then touched by a defensive player. When the ball contacts the backboard, it is now considered to be on its downward flight. If a defensive player then touches the ball and it has a possibility of entering the basket, it is goaltending. Officials, don't get too technical here. If we have a defensive player who makes contact with the ball after it touches the backboard and it has a chance of getting close to entering the basket, rule a goaltending violation. A change in the definition of when a team player is a player versus bench personnel has been made so that all team members now become bench personnel during timeouts and intermissions. The rationale is that doing so makes coaches responsible for the conduct of their team during timeouts. It's important to note that a timeout does not officially begin until the official reports the timeout to the scores table and directs the timer to start the timeout clock. So if a player commits a technical foul for unsportsmanlike conduct during a timeout or intermission, this foul would be a bench technical charged directly to the player and indirectly to the head coach. In Rule 7, officials will now use the three-point line for determining whether the designated spot throw-in will occur on the end line or the sideline. The imaginary line from the corner to the free throw line no longer exists, and this change will impact front court and back court throw-ins. So if the stoppage of play occurs on or within the three-point line, the designated spot shall be the nearest point on the end line, 3 feet outside the lane line. If the stoppage occurs outside the three-point line, the designated spot shall be the nearest sideline at the 28-foot line. Remember, when the ball goes out of bounds, we still use a throw-in spot where the ball left the playing court. In Rule 9, changes have been made to lessen the severity of the penalty for players who purposefully and/or deceitfully delay returning to the playing court after being legally out of bounds and then become the first player to touch the ball after doing so. This is now a violation. The thrower may not be the first to touch the ball after re-entering the playing area after purposefully and/or deceitfully delaying his or her movement. Similar to the change for the thrower, if a player purposefully and/or deceitfully delays his or her return to the court after legally going out of bounds, it is a violation if this player is the first to touch the ball after returning to the court. This rule prevents players from gaining an unfair advantage through deceptive tactics. It is no longer an automatic technical foul if a player intentionally slaps or strikes the backboard or causes the ring to vibrate while a try or tap for field goal is in flight or touching the backboard or is in the basket cylinder above the basket. Now we have basket interference when a player slaps or strikes the backboard, causing the backboard or basket to vibrate while the ball is on or within either the basket or is touching the backboard or within the cylinder. The rationale for this change is that it no longer requires officials to judge intent on these plays and instead allows officials to focus on how the striking of the backboard impacts the ball and impacts the shot attempt. 25-26 editorial changes. Language was removed from the definition of an intentional foul in Rule 419, specifically contact intended to stop the clock or keep it from starting is no longer automatically categorized as intentional. Officials should not consider whether illegal contact is an attempt to manipulate the clock. Instead, officials should now focus on assessing whether the contact is excessive, dangerous, or compromises player safety as the criteria for ruling an intentional foul.